It's a historic day here in Las Vegas. We are just hours away from the grand opening of Resorts World. It is the first new property on the Strip in more than a decade.
The first hand of the session is a weird one. We open pocket kings under the gun for $20. The button calls, the small blind calls, and the big blind squeezes for $120. The button has about $350 to start, and the big blind has about $500 to start.
120. 120 is the new 20.
Since these stack sizes are on the smaller side, we just decide on a call, as we can likely get it in good on the flop with a low SPR.
Calls 120.
This is where it gets weird, as the button then decides to actually back raise all in for around $350.
All in has been on C2.
The small blind folds, and now the big blind has a decision. Let's listen in.
How did that happen? How did that happen the way it played out? It wasn't stealing.
The big blind eventually folds, and we snap call. When the dealer puts out the flop, we are feeling pretty confident, and even more confident when we turn a set. We go ahead and show our hand as we think we are the winner, and we are! Of course, the person that 3-bet always has something to say.
I actually had a hand there.
You had the winner? 3-4?
I mean, I can't just, obviously, yeah.
3-4 offsuit?
3-4 off. Very nice.
Better than us.
In this next hand, the hijack opens for $20. We 3-bet ace king off to $65. We are about $800 effective, and the hijack makes a call. The flop comes 10 of spades, 8 of spades, 6 of clubs. We do not have a spade, and this is a pretty draw heavy board. We also have a range advantage, so we downbet here for $50. Our opponent makes a call. The turn is just what we ordered as the king of hearts rolls off. Our opponent checks again, and we bet $155, or about 60% pot. They make the call. The river is the 5 of clubs. This does not change much, as the front door flush draw does not get there. The main hands we are concerned with here are sets such as 10-10, 8-8, or 6-6. This is really it though, and we would expect these hands to check raise the flop often. There's about $545 in the pot, and our opponent has about $500 behind. We tank for a little bit to make it seem like we missed a draw or are bluffing, until we go all in.
All in. All in. All in call.
As you can see, our opponent quickly beats us into the pot and shows his frustration with a loud grunt. I'm thinking he had something like king, queen, or pocket jacks or pocket queens, and was just sure I was bluffing. That's why he snapped me off. A nice couple hands to start off our session. This next hand is slightly tilting. The cutoff opens for $20, and we 3-bet on the button to $60 with pocket queens. The small blind actually cold calls, and the original raiser folds. I expect the small blind to have medium pocket pairs here quite often. Generally, you don't want to have a cold calling range in the small blind, as it makes playing your hand so face up. This spot is no exception. The flop comes 5 of clubs, 3 diamonds, deuce of hearts. Besides the unlikely possibility of 5-5, we are feeling pretty good about this flop. The small blind checks, and we bet $50. Our opponent calls. At this point, I'm fairly certain we are up against a smaller pair, such as 8s through jacks. The turn comes the 6 of clubs. We are not concerned with any 4x here, so we continue for value, betting 125 and a 245. We could go bigger, but we have been in a similar spot in the past where we have gone too big, and my opponent has managed to fold a big overpair. Versus this opponent specifically, who seemed tighter, we did not want this to happen again. Our opponent makes a call, and the river is the 4 of clubs. The small blind checks, and this really sucks, as now we are just chopping in most cases with the 6 high straight on the board. I suppose there is also a concern that our opponent can have pocket 7s for the higher straight, but this is not too likely, so we still try to get them off a chop by betting $500. It does not take too long to get called. Our opponent indeed has a pocket pair, as he shows pocket jacks.
Got bailed out.
Yep.
I definitely thought I had the best hand. I just think this would be so sick if you just had like 8-7 here or something.
There is a straddle on under the gun in this next hand for $10, and under the gun one player limps. We raise to $50 in the low jack with ace of hearts, queen of hearts, and just the original limper calls. In watching other hands, we will later learn this limper is a major fish. The flop comes king of diamonds, 8 of spades, 3 of clubs. This board should connect with our range the most, so we bet small, $45. Our opponent makes a call. The turn comes the 5 of clubs. At this point, our opponent could have many different hands, such as a low to middling pair, some random backdoor draw, or they could just have a king. I think barreling here is good as we get a lot of these hands to fold. We size up and bet $140 into 205, hoping to get the job done. The job does not get done as we get called once again. The river comes the king of hearts and our opponent actually leads for $250. This lead and sizing does not make a whole lot of sense, but with this action, we cannot call. We make the fold, but we'll see our opponent make a similar play later as a bluff, so it is possible we got here. This next hand is a crazy one, where there is a bomb pot for $20 per person. This means every player puts in $20 into the pot and goes straight to a flop. In this case, there is 8 people, so there's already $160 in the pot. The flop comes Jack of hearts, 8 of hearts, 3 of clubs. It checks to us and we finally look at our hand. We have Queen 3 of hearts, so bottom pair plus the third nut flush draw in the low jack. We want to see the turn as cheaply as possible, so we check. The cutoff, however, overbets pot for $200. We just call and the turn is an absolute gem, the 3 of diamonds. This is really great as our opponent should not expect us to call flop with a 3 very often unless we have a hand exactly like the one we have, that is pair plus flush draw. We check and unfortunately our opponent checks back. The river is the deuce of clubs. Now, it is a question of whether to bet or check. If we check and our opponent bets large, I think it would actually be too thin to even check raise. Also, it is possible our opponent just has a weak top pair that they are hoping to get to showdown. For this reason, we decide to bet ourselves. We bet $400 into the pot of $560. Our opponent makes a call and we are good. He will later tell us that he had Jack 8 for 2 pair. Really good check back on the turn for him in this situation, although not sure if it is overall correct as he is giving flush draws a free card. In this hand, there's an under the gun limp and the under the gun 1 player raises to $25. We call on the big blind Jack 10 of hearts, and the limper calls. In a tougher game, I would just fold this hand out of position or squeeze. The flop comes quite ideal, Jack of diamonds, 5 of hearts, 4 hearts. We have top pair and a flush draw. We check, the under the gun player checks, and the under the gun 1 player bets $50. Maybe there's an argument to raise here, but we just call. The limper calls as well. The turn brings no help as the 9 of spades shows up. It checks to the aggressor, who puts in a hefty bet of $200 or about pot. We still cannot fold here, so we make the call. The limper finally gets out of the way and we are hoping for a certain river. The deuce of hearts qualifies for that certain river. We got there with our flush. Our opponent most likely has an overpair, like queens through aces here, with the way he has been betting into multiple opponents, so I think a lead is in order, as we do not want this hand to get checked back. We lead for $275, which is not too large relative to the pot. We want to get a crying call out of our opponent, whereas a large bet size may quickly get a fold. Unfortunately, we do not get a call as our opponent makes a fold. This hand is quick. We raise 8-7 of clubs in early position. There is a middle position and cutoff call. The flop comes Queen of clubs, 5 of clubs, 3 of spades. The cutoff in this hand looks like Rick from Pawn Stars and has been pretty tight, so we check out of position. The middle position player checks and Rick bets $40. We call and the middle position folds. The turn is the Queen of hearts. We check and Rick continues for $75. With only 1 card to come, we just make the fold as our flush draw is so weak and Rick clearly is so tight. In the last hand of the night, there is a $10 button straddle. There are a couple of limps for $10 in early position. We squeeze in the small blind with King Jack of spades for $65. Just the big blind cold calls. I don't really take much from this other than this person is likely a fish because, as previously mentioned, cold calling in spots like this is not good. The flop comes ace of spades, 5 of spades, deuce of diamonds. This is nice as we have the nut flush draw, backdoor straight draw, and a large range advantage. With this said, we bet $50. The big blind thinks for a while and actually raises to $175.
$175 total.
They only have $435 total, and I do not imagine we can fold this hand on the turn if we were to just call the check raise, so we go ahead and stick it in there. Our opponent makes a call.
Calls. My guys are gonna run it up?
Yeah, I mean, we can't run it more than once, right?
Yeah.
So, what's the point? The dealers are still clearly learning the rules. We need a spade, and we do not get one.
Aces.
Our opponent voluntarily shows ace-king off.
3, 4.
I don't have to show you my hand.
Yeah, here we're not showing called hands. You don't have to show. Yes, I'll call the floor over and let them check.
Along with winning the pot, our opponent also wants to see our hand. If he did not already show his hand, I can understand having to show first as I jammed. But we are already past this point and our opponent is scooping the pot. Tell me if you think this is bad etiquette or not in the comments. We take a big hit to end the night and it's time to cash out.
16, 65, 7, 8, and 9.
Alright guys, what's up? We just finished our poker session at the new Resort World. We cashed out for $16.69, bought in for $1,000. The games were okay, but there was a surprising number of regs, just because I guess I wanted to try out the new casino. Still some pretty bad players, so we did okay, but yeah, the hotel's nice, and yeah, don't know what else to say. As we end the night, we admire the Rolls Royce one more time and head to the Vegas Strip for some street tacos.